No mai, haere mai ki Aotearoa Rugby Pod. Welcome to the Aotearoa Rugby Pod, brought to you by Ashley Martin Medical Hair Centres. Plenty for you this week that we're very excited about. Starting the show with the turning point, the Ashley and Martin turning point, talking about the wingers, Kini Naholo, and what that could look like as far as selection for the All Blacks. We're also really excited to announce a new partnership within the show with Rugby Ready, which is co-founded by Dr. Nick Gill, the All Blacks legendary strength and conditioning trainer. Stay tuned because we're going to be giving away memberships, the chance to work with Nick Gill on your fitness for your rugby season, not just your rugby season, your life if you're not a current rugby player. So big giveaway there. Great prizes that we're going to be running for the next 30 weeks. Also, we're going to be talking a little bit about Billy Proctor. What an amazing return. We'll be talking a little about the Chiefs and their attack in comparison to, say, the Blues attack, and how teams getting into the 22 can be a little bit more effective when other teams are just struggling to get the ball down in the end and being held up. So lots to talk about. We got your emails as well. Plenty of comments in the YouTube comments section that we've had to scope through. There's plenty to respond to there. And of course, the picking comp as well. So today we're not going to have Bryn Hall with us, but we still do have James Parsons. Chipper, well, excited to talk about Nick Gill, talk to Nick Gill later on. Great partnership with Rugby Ready that we've got coming up. Yeah,
I think the exciting factor, we approached Gilly a while back, but the concept of trying to give back to the rugby community, and I think that's what excites us the most, and I know it certainly excites them. And I just know being a professional player, and that old adage, if you only knew what you knew at certain stages of the career back when you're a lot younger, you wouldn't have to unpick as many bad habits. And I just think the concept of training and nutrition and mental skills is a massive area of growth for younger players, but also players that are already currently in the professional environments.
So stay tuned for a little bit longer within the show. We'll tell you all about what we're trying to do with Nick Gill and how you can win through Rugby Ready, the chance to work with him on your fitness, whether you're a schoolboy, whether you're a club player, whether you're a professional player, or whether you're the family of a player. Doesn't matter. Chance for you to work with the best to get your health to where it could be. So we're really excited about that. Now, let's start off with the Ashley and Martin turning point, because on the weekend, Kini Naholo just went absolute beast mode for the Hurricanes to get that win over the line.
Yeah, look, it was an impressive Hurricanes performance across the board. It was hard for me, when we think about the concept of the Ashley and Martin turning point, who it could be. But I think that pick and go try through the middle from Kini Naholo really turned the game on its head. But it was also a number of carries in and around the breakdown, out on the edge, and I thought defensively he was really strong. We know the Canes, love that rush D, and he really put his body in the line of sight of key players or key game drivers of the Brumbies a number of times. And you just look at his stats: 14 carries, 13 of them went to ground, 160 running metres, 11 tackle breaks, 2 line breaks, 100% gain line on carries, which isn't that easy to do. There's very rare that players get 100% over the gain line with every carry. And then, as I mentioned, I thought his defence was really strong. 7 of 8 tackles at 88% against a pretty strong and very fast edge from the Brumbies. So, yeah, completely deserving of the turning point. But I also think he may have injected a turning point in his season, and getting that consistency that he's been looking for. But also I think for the Canes, it's a turning point for them as well. We said the Blues and the Canes going into that weekend needed big results, and obviously the Blues fell short and the Canes really, I suppose, lifted. And yeah, I think we'll probably get into it a little bit later, but I think there's one very critical player that has brought the energy that the Canes were searching for.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, of course, when we think about the turning point, Mark Tele'a could obviously be a big part of that for Kini Naholo, because when Mark Tele'a announced that he's leaving, obviously every winger around the country went, oh, there's a spot. There's a spot possibly available in the All Blacks. I mean, let's have a look at that and where Kini Naholo might stand within that. Obviously, we've got Caleb Clark, who's been out injured for a few weeks now, who was playing very well and you would think would walk back into that left wing spot. You've got Sevu Reece, who's also been playing well, you would think could probably be a starter in that right wing spot, especially if Will Jordan is at fullback. So where within the rest of the squad and what they're trying to achieve with their wingers is Kini Naholo likely to fall when you consider what Mark Tele'a brought to the squad?
Yeah, well, I think we've seen Mark on the left wing and play the role of left and right. And Caleb's that sort of left wing power winger. Kini sort of certainly fits the mould of that. And where potentially carrying two power wingers can work is with players like Ruben Love. Potentially having the ability to play on the edge, play at fullback, play at 10, and does that provide a spot that you carry a little bit less on the outside because of Rieko Ioane and the ability to play on the edge, that we may see other positions bolstered. So I don't think it's necessarily an automatic win for a winger as such because of the versatility of Will Jordan. Is it an opportunity to carry Stephen Perifeta still, or a younger 10, like a Josh Jacob, Taha Kimura, with Ruben Love also being able to provide cover in that 10 space. So I think there's a lot more complexity than just replacing Mark to consider. But if you looked at it from a winger specific, I think Ruben Love can play wing. I think Leroy Carter's knocking on the door. He's been very consistent, and he has the ability to play left and right and potentially fullback. We've seen him do that at Bay of Plenty. Shea Fihaki's coming into his own. He's been in the squad last season. And all these names that we mentioned, Caleb Tangatau obviously is another one, but I think they're going to need their teams to get into the finals to decide it. And you're going to have to play big games and big minutes and have a big impact like Kini Naholo did on a consistent basis through that final series.
You have to think that Tamatava Nawe also comes into that conversation as a player who can fit multiple spots in the squad, as a player who's a power winger when he needs to be, obviously great over the ball and does all those other things really well, has a kicking game. Like, he is obviously probably in that conversation to some degree. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think with, Geordie coming back and not necessarily needing to rush straight into 80 minutes. He's at a big load over there. His ability to play 12 and on the edge, fits a bench role, perfectly. We did see Quinn Tupaia play on the wing for the All Blacks 15. So, he comes an option that's probably competing.
Yeah, if his knees are right? He could have an ACL.
Potentially. But I still think, if his knee is right, the poor old Chiefs are facing a few injuries at the moment. We've seen Anton Leonard-Brown as well play on the edge for the Chiefs. I know he's injured as well, but just best case scenario, there are players that have been selected in that midfield wing role that have represented the All Blacks previously. So again, I think the Highlanders, with the tough finish in, Tamatava Nawe will need some opportunity on the edge, but also just need big performances. That we saw at the start of the season.
For me, it's pretty obvious they blew their chance with Sean Stevenson, because the way he's playing, he probably could have been, when they picked Fiaki last year, that was probably blowing it with Sean Stevenson. He's gone. Yeah. Forget about Sean Stevenson. But Fiaki now is playing way better than he was when he got picked in the All Blacks. So when you say that, it's like, okay, well, they like him. We know they like him. We know he's got the boot. We've seen some exceptional speed from him, and we know they like him, and he's actually performing well now.
Yeah, and I think they trust him, which is the big thing. Trust is a big thing at that international level, that when the game's online, can you put a guy on? They have that trust in him. Versatility, again, I hate to go back to it, but when you're picking squads and you've got to cover, he does cover a lot of roles. Probably definitely not first five, but definitely anywhere in that back three. But he's playing the house down. It's just, can he cover the left wing? Because I feel like he's probably competing with his teammate and Sever Reece, who can cover the left wing. Yeah. And I think the pieces of the puzzle that are key is what I mentioned before, is where they're at with the 10s, where they're at the 15s, and what 15s can play wing.
I really like your point about Ruben Love, because he did come on against Japan on the wing, didn't he? But when we think about guys who've been great wingers over the years for the All Blacks, the likes of, let's say, Corey Jane. Yeah. Great under the high ball, great kicking game, great running game, has a good understanding of how to work in that pendulum at the back, all of those things. We haven't seen a lot of Ruben Love on the wing, but in the past we've seen Geordie Barrett get thrown on the wing because of his understanding of those elements. He seems like a really interesting prospect out there.
But the beauty of it, we've got a long history of guys that probably play fullback for their super clubs start on the wing because there's just less pressure. Yeah. There's a lot on a 15. That 10-15 access is massive pressure. I can even think, moving out of the midfield, Richard Kahui played a lot on the right wing. Ben Smith, obviously, Izzy Dag. All these guys started on the wing and then eventually got their time at 15. And I think Ruben Love fits that mould perfectly because because he's got the speed, he's got the skill set, and as we're seeing with a lot of the super sides that are doing well, around kick strategy, kicking from the edge is a real weapon now, and it's a real way to manipulate that backfield, because if you are not going to come up, he has the ability of the old Jeff Wilson chip and chase and that instinctive play. And I think that the way he's performed at 10, and if he can get the Hurricanes into the finals, I think he's one of the names that you would expect to be read out.
The other person who's been around the All Blacks but got dropped quite quickly was Moana Pasifika. He played last year and then suddenly was gone. Whenever he touches the ball, he looks electric right now. I wonder what he has to do to get back in that conversation.
Yeah, look, I think he's a player that definitely can, again, do the power winger, because he just is very slippery, but he's also got the ability to go over the top and the right wing spot.
And he can play fullback.
He can, he's played a lot of fullback.
Yeah.
But the other thing is he actually impressed at centre for Bay of Plenty. I felt like he went back to NPC to say, hey, I can cover a few roles here. So I think he started convincing selectors to definitely take him serious. And I know I sound like a broken record every time at this year, but big performances, big games, you need your teams to get in the, either semi-finals or grand finals.
Yeah. And
you've got to play a game that people step back and go, wow, and that's how you'll present yourself when you've got, because as we've just spoken about, 10 players.
That's right.
They're not all getting picked.
But some of them are in the Chiefs and Crusaders. And when we look back, and it's quite interesting that in the history of Super Rugby, only 2 teams have ever won Super Rugby from outside the top 2. That is the 99 Crusaders and the 2015 Highlanders. So when you look at that and you look at the way the table looks, given the Reds have a game in hand, but the way the table looks right now, the Chiefs and the Crusaders are in a position to put the likes of Fihaki and Narawa and Carter in better positions to get selected, aren't they?
Absolutely. And even the midfield with Anton Leonard-Brown and Quinta Pai, they come into their edge if they're fit and available. So I just think with this home advantage, it's becoming very evident now as the competition gets a little bit tighter. It's pretty hard to win away from home. So I think if you can finish in that top 2, you definitely give yourself a realistic chance of going to the big dance. And then once you're in that top 2 and in that final, I think there's a number of examples where even though the home side gets to that final, has the ability on the occasion to deliver and step up.
So let me chuck in a Smokey, because it's not like it's a big enough list. But how good would AJ Lamb be wearing the number 23 jersey? The ability to cover the midfield and the wing, great impact player, strong presence on the ball and off the ball.
I think he's in great form. I think 12, he's come to life. The moment he's been moved into 12, he just seems to love that position, but it also suits his natural instincts and his power game, but also suits him defensively. And we've seen enough of him on the wing. So a great Smokey that has played All Blacks 15, has been called into the All Blacks squad, as well as like a Shea Fihaki. So again, a player that potentially, if the Blues can slip into the finals or have a big end, it's a like-for-like comparison again to like a Tavatava Nawai or a midfielder that can play on the edge.
Yeah, so speaking of playing on the edge, we saw Billy Proctor return for the Hurricanes on the weekend. It looked like he'd been playing every game all season.
The thing I loved about Billy is when there was a small win, he would sprint from the edge and, back slap, and you could see what it meant to the players around him getting a nod. We spoke about those players that you see in the shed when they arrive and they sit down, he seems like the guy that's the glue that ignites that Cane side. He's one of their captains. He's coming in fresh. He's coming in eager. Statistically, it was out the gate. And that's what I sort of alluded to it before. Like Kini Naholo was a turning point in terms of one action. But if you look at an overall performance for a second run, 19 carries, 13 of them were into collision, 95 metres, 10 tackle breaks, Kini 11 tackle breaks. That's pretty high, like in the midfield. Yes, he spent some time on the edge. 2 line breaks, 100% D. And the bit that I like the most is the effort areas. For a midfielder that, sort of hovers to the edge, 25 rucks cleaned. Yeah, he was looking for work. He was looking for the hard stuff. Where someone might have missed a role, Billy Proctor's there.
Yeah.
And it's that stuff that I think gets in the most respect internally. You can see from the group, you can see from the coaching group. And I genuinely think his presence and what I would expect he'd go to 80 minutes could be a clear defining factor in the Canes having a realistic chance of getting themselves back in this comp.
And his connection with Higgins seems very strong. Higgins looked good in his return as well.
Yeah, and Higgins he's one of those players that, how do I explain it? He sort of can make something out of nothing.
Yeah.
You know, like it's not on and then he pops out the other side, he'll do a chip and chase and he'll get the bounce and he scores a try. They've spent enough time at Wellington Lions together, so they've got a good synergy, and he'll just back himself. You know, and Riley, I think, with more time in the All Blacks 15, I don't think it's going to be too long before you're talking about him being in that All Blacks selection frame as well.
Yeah. How hard is it? I mean, especially when you look at Proctor, but Higgins also, to come off a lengthy break and to perform like that? Like, what do you have to do to get yourself in that spot? If you're not necessarily playing a whole bunch of club footy to warm yourself back up, you're jumping back into the big time.
Yeah, and the beauty is we've got Nick Gill later, and you know, there is so much you can do to prepare yourself for match-like conditions, but the reality is there's no replica. You can give yourself every opportunity. You can create down and ups. You can create tackle bag stuff, or you know, carrying through contact and then doing Broncos. There's a lot of stuff you can try and get your body acclimatized to it, but that's why you saw him come off the bench. That's why you saw he didn't play a full 80 minutes. I think in your older veterans, like if we use Richie McCaw as an example, he could come back and play 80 minutes. Yeah. But he at test match level. But he was a unique beast. Like, he's sort of like an outlier. I think everyone has sort of shown, you know, and Billy's got an Achilles injury, so it's not something you want to, you know, rush back and overload. So I think the fact that he's back out there, he's proven he would have had to get through a lot of testing to get to that point. So he's ready, but I think in 4 or 5 games, we're going to see an even better, even though his stats are ridiculous, I think he's going to be even better and more influential.
I presume you have a lot of energy in that first game, you know.
There's a lot of adrenaline.
4 or 5 games in, is that where the real testing point comes?
I think so, because you always see that first game back, you know, from a long-term injury, there's almost like a spike because you're just playing on adrenaline and you're into everything and, you know, you're just ready to rock and roll. I feel like what we've seen from long-term injuries, that 4th or 5th game will give you a really clear idea of where players are probably at mentally, because the body will start to fatigue, how they're recovering, and what you do outside the training environment becomes incredibly important to your ability to deliver under the bright lights.
Yeah. Now, the attack of the Hurricanes is an interesting one. It hasn't been tremendous when they got into the 22. They've blown a lot of chances when they've entered. What we saw on the weekend, and we've seen it, I think, from the Chiefs as well, and we've seen it from the Crusaders, the ability to take advantage when you're attacking outside the 22, not end up relying on little pick and goes and things like that around the corner where the opposition defence is set. It seems like the current game is better set up to strike now than to strike in 10 phases time.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing around the pick and go factor is how you manipulate the defence, because defenders are now trying to almost lose the collision, which sounds absolutely ridiculous in a defensive set. But even to the point, Alan Craig, off the line defensively from Moana Pasifika, slid on his knees, tall man, and almost absorbed the contact and fell back. And had to roll out because he actually didn't get them over the line. But the mindset's changing around the 22, and you're seeing the sides. Potentially the sides that are doing best is probably they're starting the attacking phases outside the 22 of the Chiefs, of the Crusaders, you know, even the Brumbies to an extent, instead of, you know, necessarily what they do at the corner. But it's becoming a point of difference of the top 3 or 4. Yeah. And the rest, because the Canes were at 35%, the Blues were again at 27%.
This is converting into
the 22. And I do want to highlight Moana Pasifika, because they had 15 visits for 8 turnovers, but 3 of those turnovers are at line out and 4 of those turnovers were at scrums. And then they decided, actually, let's just go to the quick tap, and scored points. You know, big bodies, but if you look at what Artie Savea does, and this is what I mean about manipulating defence, there's still an element of the pick and go or the scoop that will work if you're set up to do it. Artie pops out and just draws in 2 defenders because he's a threat. And I know it's Ardie Savea, not everyone's going to draw in that much attention. And then just shovels the pass, Miracle Whailangi.
Shovels the pass while looking.
Yeah, right at them. And that's what it's designed to do.
If we look at the Blues, we've got a question from Lucian Borter on YouTube about them. He says, I'd like to know how many times the Blues have had tries disallowed due to being held up over the line, meaning no clear visibility of the try being scored. It's really frustrating to watch them season after season committing these same errors. Clearly their forwards or coaches should be smarter to not allow almost every game. They do this every single game. When we crunch the numbers, they've forced in-goal dropouts 4 times, which means twice they've been held up. Once they've knocked it on over the line. We saw Tele'a a couple of weeks ago do that. Once a kick into the in-goal and then the opposition forced it. So it actually hasn't been that common an occurrence. But because of all of the phases that they're racking up, you can feel it. The Blues, 35% of their tries are scored in the first 2 phases. The Chiefs, 56% are scored in the first 2 phases. The more phases you have, the less tries you score, the more opportunities for error, the more opportunities for the defence to get into the ruck. So the Blues are making a pretty obvious error there, aren't they?
Well, clearly, because they're not getting the results.
Yeah.
But I do think it's where that start of attack is.
Yeah.
And when you kick to the corner and go to a maul, you're not leaving yourself with a lot of options. You've probably got the pick and go and the scoop, or the crossfield kick to a winger. Or a big bridge pass because you've drawn into defence. So there needs to be almost like a rule of thumb, like, okay, we're going to have 3 cracks. If we don't get there, let's just change the point of contact, and that can be through the forwards, it can be out the back, it can be a crossfield kick, whatever it may be. But I think when you look at Chiefs and the Crusaders, a lot of that's happening further out.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm trying to get at with the tap. Maybe some innovation around the tap. And coming up with the concept, because Moana Pasifika are the most, pretty much when they tap, they score points.
Yeah.
And I think they worked that out on the weekend.
Fragmented defence.
Yeah. And their line out just struggles, and their scrum is susceptible to a penalty the other way.
Yeah.
So it's not working for them. So they made that change, and again, it showed on the weekend, they got points. I'm just saying, I think both the Blues and the Canes potentially just don't need to suck up all that meterage, and they've all got the skill set of the Chiefs and the Crusaders in terms of, athletic ability, flair, attacking skill set. It may be a tap, it may be, you can kick backwards and have a line-out strike, or it may be bunter plays rather than mauls, or plays around the front. I just think they've got to give defences something else to think about, because at the moment, for the Blues, teams know what's coming. For the Hurricanes, I think it's more they're trying to score in the first or second phase, and it's forcing errors. They're not being as patient, and you just have to think about the pass behind Harkin, got through a gap down the short side, and it's just maybe slowing down and being able to manipulate that defence to find the space rather than force the space.
Yeah. With the Chiefs, they make a lot of mistakes. They make a lot of turnovers in the opposition 22, but it feels like it's because they're trying things.
Yes, but if you look on the weekend, they only had 10 turnovers, and I think the biggest change for the Chiefs and the Crusaders is the amount of kicks they're taking, like 41 kicks from the Chiefs in the weekend. And I'm not saying these are not attacking kicks, 1,300 metres attacking kicks, but they had 1,000 running metres as well. So I just think their decision-making on when to play and when to pass has got a lot better, but also their ability to kick across the field. And I know you weren't here last week, but I sort of mentioned it. Basically, from 9 to 15, they kick.
Yeah.
Like, it's just literally give it to the person who's in the best position to kick to where we know we want to get to.
So the opposition struggle to know when it's coming.
Who are we charging?
Yeah.
Who are we blocking? And if you charge, there's a bailout. Yeah. And then if you try and charge, there's a bailout. And this is what I mean, this kicking from the edge, like Severis, Shafi, Aki are great at it as well. Mm-hmm. We know Will Jordan's strong in it. So it's taking the pressure off exiting, and the Canes have nailed this as well in terms of coming out of their own half. 0% failed exits. Same for the Chiefs, same for the Crusaders. And that's where we're seeing teams that are doing well in this latter part is they've just totally changed their attacking structure and how they're balancing between the kick and through the hand, because it's still 50-50 in terms of exiting through the hand or kicking. So it's, although the kicking meters have risen, sometimes they're attacking kicks to exit, but they're not failing. So they're making great decisions around what to do.
I think the other thing about the way that maybe the Chiefs are attacking, we saw this as well, Satiti coming on and being superb, is it's not just a crash up the middle, it's footwork at the line and the opening up to the offload. We're seeing that from MP as well. Like, their loose forwards do an amazing job at that.
Yeah, absolutely. But don't underestimate the 10 out the back or the 12 out the back of Wallace Satiti's late footwork is drawing the defence. Like, they're looking like a legitimate option. The tip is looking like a legitimate option, which doesn't allow teams to double team. But the teams that are struggling to do that, they can still do the footwork. But if the tip doesn't engage the player, or the inside guy doesn't, or the 10 out the back doesn't engage the player, you're going to get steamrolled with two shoulders, because the defence. So again, even though that ball carrier does that, you need everyone else. And that's the beauty of rugby. It is a team sport. If someone misses their role, you as an individual or the team are going to pay the price.
Yeah. Let's have a quick look at that MP loose forward trio. I know we've talked about them in the past. So we saw it again on the weekend. Vailangi and Saver and just Sinsamisi. It all works.
Well, Tupou Ta'ailoa, I think, flipped the game on its head with his charge up the middle. And he met Silasila, and I don't think anyone won, but it definitely got me out of the seat, where I was previously probably watching going, man, who's going to do something like this? Both sides just had such high error rates. Not that they weren't getting to the 22, they just couldn't capitalise. And he did this run, which then Miracle Vailangi goes, I want piece of action. Boom, line break. And then from there, they got their first try. But from a numbers sense, this is outrageous when you go through this. So Vailangi, 12 carries. Adi Savea, 26 carries. Tupou Ta'ailoa, 17 carries. That's the amount of work they're doing. And the type 5 aren't a small number, but they're just finding reasons to get involved in the game. And if it's not one of them, it's three of them coming to the line, which allows all sorts. And then defensively, 13 tackles from Miracle, 12 tackles from Adi, both of them at 100%, and then 13 tackles from Tupou Ta'ailoa, but he did miss 3. But pretty effective numbers. And then you look at their rucks, and they're all above 25.
Yeah.
So normally when you see these sorts of carry numbers, they are just into it. I think it's the engine they all have to keep going, but they feed off each other. Once one does something, it's almost like the other two go, I want it. I want this, and then the work they do at the defensive breakdown, they are really, really strong at the moment. And I think Adi is a catalyst of it, because when Adi was missing at the Brumbies, they didn't quite have this. They didn't get that sort of mojo thrown. So I do think he becomes a very critical player if they are going to, reach that, final stage as well.
Now, the epic form of the Moana Pasifika loose forwards, Tupou Ta'ailoa, Miracle Vailangi, Adi Savea, got us to thinking, well, what is the most effective loose forward trio in the history of Super Rugby, going all the way back to 96? I suppose when you look back to 96 and you see Brooke, Carter and Jones, they were epic in the way the game was played back then. It was a different game. Yeah, epic at that game.
But I think they changed the game, the 8 pulling off and 6 looping round, scrumming for tries over the line and the control at the back, drop goals. Sort of touched on Zimmy previously, but I think they all played their role, and they weren't, it's all about me. It was probably the start of professionalism, but the start of the trio and working as a trio.
Yeah. Who else do you see?
Well, I don't want to just go straight to the Blues, but I have to go there, because I think one of the most underrated,
no surprises,
is Gus Collins, Dan Braden, Xavier.
Loves a group of battlers.
Oh, mate, it was just, it was very untraditional Blues, if I'm honest. But
undersized.
Undersized, but man, even you think about that Carlos try, who's up the middle supporting, I think it was Rokothoka, it's Gus Collins, busts up the middle and, links, and that sort of work rate and effort was a big part of that Blues success. But you can't go past, I think when Mose Tuali'i sort of went down to the Crusaders, it allowed a balance to the Reid and McCaw for the Crusaders, and had a lot of success. I think you can't ignore Finnegan, George Smith and Jim Williams.
That's epic. When the Brumbies were going, Williams crashing, Finnegan with his little plays at Finnegan. Smith was the prototype, number 7.
He sort of started the breakdown turnover effect, the jackler and needing to sort of get rid of them. I think from a fear factor, probably this is my own fear, but when you run out onto the field and you've got Jerry Collins, Chris Masoi and Rodney Soilalo, my gosh, you're thinking I might shovel it here, or we're going to need to work in threes defensively because if they came anywhere near a collision area, they are going to destroy you.
Yeah, of course, the South Africans. There are some incredible South African trios. When the Cheetahs and the Lions merged into the Cats, Andre Vos, Springboks captain, Andre Venter, 60-odd tests, and Rassie Erasmus as well. As a trio, that was a hectic trio. But looking through the years, Burger, Lowe, Vermuelen at the Stormers, crazy trio.
I don't think you can beat that.
That's a trio.
That is a serious trio. I think probably if you look at it, the biggest competitor would be the Collins Masoi Soialo versus the Burger Lowe Vermuelen.
Yeah.
And I say Vermuelen because I think I'll never forget a game we were playing in Cape Town, and all week our forwards coach, who was Glenn Moore at the time, there was all this chat about Vermuelen, and he started calling him Van der Hoe. Yeah. Are you going to Van der Hoe him? Are you going to Van der Hoe him? Like this whole thing, just this aura about Vermuelen was just built in our forward pack. To the point we made one of us made a big mistake early in the game. I think it was around sort of the 25th minute, and we were at a line out, and it was an overthrow from me to the midfield. I think it was, I can't remember who it was, but because my role, I had to get first around the corner, I basically threw and sprinted round. Anyway, penalty, captains come talk, and I looked at Woody. I said, "What's going on here?" And he turns to me and goes, "Hayden Triggsy, as he referred to him, he goes, has just put 2 of the cleanest blows onto Van der Hoe's nose that you'll ever see." And I hope there's no camera footage, but I just remember cracking up in the middle. Sort of 26 minutes, and probably not appropriate, but for Woody to say 2 of the cleanest blows, and funnily enough, it was like 2 or 3 weeks later, Triggsy was signed in France. But that's how big a role Vermuelen had to say on Hayden Triggs getting another crack in France. But I suppose the respect that man has is teams would have to target him, and teams would have to somehow get under his skin to get him out of the game. He had a crooked nose, but he played on and played well.
That's old school. Vermuelen copping 2 from Triggs.
Yeah, 2 of the cleanest blows, apparently.
Epic. To impress Tony Woodcock.
Yeah.
I imagine that takes
and to get him to laugh during a game.
Yeah.
They're doing well.
Epic. So, we're giving it to the South African trio, or we're giving it to Collins, Soialo and Masoi? Or is it a fair? Because whenever you hear Schalk Burger talk, he's always talking about Jerry Collins.
Yeah.
The 2 of them
I think
in a collision course.
Too hard, but I think those are the 2 that everyone would go, holy dooly.
Watch out.
I'd like to see that. You would almost wish to see each three go again.
So as you know, Aotearoa Rugby Pod is passionate about serving the rugby community, and we've partnered with Rugby Ready to give players and their families the tools to succeed. Rugby Ready was co-founded by legendary 2-time World Cup winning All Blacks head trainer Dr. Nick Gill. Their goal is to give rugby people of all ages and abilities the knowledge and the support needed to maximise their potential. Rugby Ready's key focus is rugby strength and conditioning programs, but their desire is to help the whole community, even mums and dads, to get healthy. No shoe fits all. They create plans that fit everybody's needs and lifestyle. So, for the remaining shows of the 2025 season, that's 30 shows, we'll give away either one free 4-week training program membership, including physical and mental skills coaching, or one free ebook collection. All you need to do to win for yourself, a family member or friend, is follow @RugbyReady on Instagram and direct message ARP as well as that week's unique entry words. So provided each week in the show, e.g. ARP Ruck within the DM. That's for this week. Rugby Ready will then choose the weekly winner. We'll announce it on Aotearoa Rugby Pod. Well, Rugby Ready will shout out recipients on Instagram. Even if you don't win, you win, because we'll provide a special ARP link for 75% off your first 4 weeks of the Perform membership, or a discount on the ebook training collection. So plenty there. Check out this below. Go and click on the QR code. We'll give you everything that you need to have a go and share the knowledge and expertise of Nick Gill to help you go through. So what you do is DM at Rugby Ready, ARP, and then this week's word, which is ruck, as well as the reason why you think you are a good recipient of receiving one of these prizes. And each week for the next 30 weeks, we'll give someone either the 4-week training program or the collection of ebooks that will allow you to be fit in off-season, fit in season, all of those things. So plenty there for you, and we're really excited about partnering with Nick Gill. So incredibly happy to invite onto the show Dr. Nick Gill. Nick, congratulations on a nice looking program there at Rugby Ready, and the offer that you guys have, I suppose, to the rugby world to help up and comers have their chance, I suppose. But before we get into that, I suppose just to go back on who you are and how you got to where you came from, what is a head of performance at the All Blacks, and how do you become a head of performance at the All Blacks?
Yeah, gee, good question. Thanks for having me, gentlemen. I suppose, what do? My role is to ensure that come Saturday, the team, the squad, the All Blacks are ready to rock and roll, physically. So I work really closely with the coaches and the medical, physical team to basically try and bring all the pieces of the puzzle together to ensure that the players are ready to go. So I sort of lead that off-field group, and I've been doing that for a little bit of time now.
So I suppose when it comes to taking those ideas and putting them into Rugby Ready and making that available to the world, whether you're a schoolboy player or a club player or a budding provincial player, the same rules are in play. Is that what's behind Rugby Ready and making sure that everyone can get to that place?
There's just a big gap, isn't there, in knowledge and expertise, and I suppose with social media nowadays, there's a whole lot of people talking about a whole lot of stuff online, and there's I suppose a lot of misdirection or a lot of information out there that isn't actually correct or could be misleading or dangerous in the wrong hands. So I think it's a matter of making sure that all the learnings that I've had and we've had are available to people of all ages and all levels. Like you said, there's some controllable elements to preparing for the game of rugby union, and it's a beautiful game that is available for so many people to play and enjoy and love, and I suppose that you only got one body, don't you? So our goal is to try and help you look after that body and play rugby for as long as you can.
What drew me to it and following you guys on Instagram is the earlier you can get those disciplines or those habits in place, how much do you think, or how much benefit do you get by not having to unpack bad habits at that later age and stage when you should be sort of moving into that professional era?
As you climb the curve or go up levels of play, the margins are smaller. The need to be so accurate and reduce errors just gets greater and greater and greater. So if the physical side of your rugby can be in check, and you're in really good shape physically, you got some really good habits, routines, knowledge, then it just means you can focus on the things that'll matter. The things that'll really matter when you've got the ball in hand or someone's running towards you that allow you just to execute your skill set. So just taking another thing away from the table, we only have a certain amount of energy, a certain amount of attention, a certain amount of time. And so if we can get the body sorted, it means that we can just, players can focus on playing the game and being better at it.
And I think, for the parents out there that are watching this and, obviously would think, oh, this is a great concept, my daughter or son's right into rugby, their concerns of maybe it's just everyone sort of program, or that bespoke nature and the importance of that bespoke nature in terms of age, gender, ethnicity, and how you, I suppose, maneuver around that.
every single one of us has different needs or different abilities or different strengths and weaknesses. And I suppose different training ages, what we've been exposed to at what age, what support we have around us at different ages of training, the level of coaching we've had at school or lack of coaching. I'm talking, physically. So I think that, the concept behind rugby really is there's something available for, a young school age kid that wants to actually, play rugby better, play rugby to a better level, maybe isn't getting the support or the coaching they'd like at school. I had a phone call with a young lad in Canberra this morning who wants to be a professional rugby player and play for 10 years at the international level, and he's 18, and it's just perfect timing. What an opportunity to I suppose, improve the physical so that all you have to focus on is the technical and tactical. So the sooner that happens, sometimes the better.
How young is too young? Like, when should a person be getting into the gym and lifting weights and doing all those extras? What stage do you start getting into that?
Yeah, hell of a good question, to be fair. When I was coming through the ranks and studying, and I'm talking 25 years ago, sort of, it was a no-no for young people to lift weights. The idea of growth plates being damaged or interfered with, those growth stages of puberty, and it was sort of, it was something that came to our minds pretty quickly, or wasn't actually that quickly, but in the late 90s, we're talking about kids jumping off jungle gyms, and how, we can jump off a 6 foot high or 2 meter high fence or jungle gym, land and run around the playground, and we have no issues with growth plates. And the impact on the landing is massive. So I suppose what we learned from that is that you can start very, very young lifting, with resistance. The key is what sort of resistance and what sort of movements. The fundamentals of what we do is we want movements to be perfect, and if movements are perfect, then loading can begin. And I think that's what it's about. It's about understanding at whatever age, could be 13, could be 14, how are you moving, and when is appropriate to start adding some resistance, and what sort of resistance. So I don't think there's any, I don't think any age is too young. It's actually it's what's done that's important, and how well it's done. So I would think that 14, 15 is a pretty good age to start thinking about the key movements and start introducing some basic resistance, so long as form is king.
So, and that's one of the things that you guys really focus on, is making sure within the program that technique is adhered to, which prevents injuries, which prevents all those other things.
And Jip will attest to this, but you want to get really good at cleaning our bodies and tackling and scrummaging. The old saying was, the lowest body wins the collision. So we can actually, that's a fundamental. Getting your hips below your knees, getting your hips down to your ankles, in a squat pattern, so that one, you can load and be strong through your back, through your hips, through your legs, but also it means that when you need to get low in the game of rugby, you can, because you've been doing it all the time with load on your back. So I think it's the fundamentals don't change from, the age of 14 or 15 through a 10-year All Black. It's actually just doing those basic things really, really well, consistently, and being patient with your gains. And that's probably again an area where young people make mistakes, or people coaching young people make mistakes, as they try and force change too quickly, and we need to play the long game. You've only got one body, so you look after it.
Reminded me of a story when I first came into the ABs. We had dinner together and we were just having a little chat, and you spoke to me about the concept of things that don't cost anything, because as people know now, I'm Captain Intensity. I was probably looking for every silver bullet known to man to allow me to stay in the All Black environment. But even things like watching TV in a squatted position rather than using a couch or a seat. Can you talk about, we've spoken a lot about the training, but the concept of recovery, the concept of stretching, mobility, and the importance of that to actually get the best out of you when you present yourself in the gym or on the field?
I'm glad you remember that about, squatting while you're watching TV. I try and talk to young kids about squatting while they eat dinner, brushing your teeth on one leg, to work on your balance of your ankles and your knees, all those sorts of things. But But I think the recovery and the balance of your training week, again, is such a simple thing to get right, but it's also a simple thing to get really, really wrong. And so, we want to be in a great place come the game physically. We need to ensure that there's balance through the week, and young people particularly have school demands, but they've got growth demands. They often have numerous sports to balance. So there is really, really important sort of ideas there of I suppose making the most of some downtime, looking after your body, stretching and mobility. Like we grow, we go through a couple of growth spurts, most of us in our teenage years, and what happens is those bones grow real fast, but our tendons and muscles take a bit of time. So we actually all lose mobility. When we're babies, we can squat, your butt right down on the ground and you're sitting there playing happily. And as soon as we grow, all of a sudden we lose that ability to do that. And we've got to get it back. And even not just for your rugby career, but for later in life, if you've got good mobility, your back issues, your hip issues, all the issues that come with aging will be reduced if you try to regain mobility and that ability to move well.
Even the concept though, like, because sometimes it goes over the head of professionals these days: sleep, hydration, hot colds, all these sorts of things. Like they don't cost anything. The silver bullet is actually you're in control of.
People go on about ice baths and compression boots, and you get same sort of benefit from laying in your lounge with your legs up a wall, where you're getting the blood flushing out of your legs. Again, costs nothing. Sleep is king. And again, costs very little, if anything. It's discipline, isn't it? That's the key. It's actually the key word there is discipline, and it's the little things that often are the big things that make the most difference. So sleep, nutrition, elevated legs, stretching, all cost nothing, to do well. And so, we definitely need to make sure we're putting energy into that, not necessarily just looking for the silver bullet.
I suppose we've spoken about the specific training and the intensity side of it, but through your experience, I think just from an interest point of view, who's the most genetic freak you've probably come across? You've seen some amazing athletes over your time with the All Blacks.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out how I could slip you in here, Jip, but I couldn't quite manage it, mate.
I'm about to sign up for your speed program.
There's a few people, isn't there? Like someone that springs to mind literally is Jose Gill. That man, when he jumped horizontally, it was like he was flying. Like he could jump. I can't remember the exact distance because it was a long time ago. It was probably 15 years ago, but he would jump two-legged from one plot point to another. And it was just like he was in the air forever. He had jumped a long, long way. So horizontal power, amazing. I think for a man of his size, Richie McCaw's engine is still probably one of the best. He ended up finishing his career about 108 kilos, but he could just go all day. Big engine, aerobic freak, and still doing that now. I see he's riding from Queenstown to Christchurch, I think, in the weekend to raise some money. So, aerobically, he's pretty impressive. I think the ability to run fast for a long time repetitively, Beauden Barrett, there's no one that can run quickly, repetitively, and not fatigue like he can. So he's very impressive. And I think probably someone that's quite new, that's a bit of a freak, and I just like watching him move with weight is George Bell. He's 115 odd kilos, but just put lots of weight on his back, and it just looks effortless. So very strong and powerful through his full body. So he's only a young athlete, a long way to go still physically and with his rugby career, but I'm excited by his prospects as a strength and power athlete.
The other person we see is Cortez Ratima, lifting with the props. He's pretty freakish with his strength, his ability to lift.
Some of those whippets are pretty special. Richie Moe was the same, 80 kilos ringing wet, and he'd be squatting 170. So, some of those smaller athletes are also extremely strong, and I suppose probably if you worked out strength per kilogram of body weight, relatively speaking, they could be stronger than some of our big Bokkers.
You look at as well, at the other end of the scale, guys that squeezed everything possible out of themselves through discipline, which you mentioned before. There is obviously well-documented Owen Franks, Ben Franks, in terms of their discipline routine to allow them to be the very best version of themselves genetically. Is there anyone else that comes to mind that people may not have heard of that fits into that criteria? And I mean this is respectfully, this is definitely more my criteria than any other criteria. So it's with respect.
I remember Liam Messam probably had one of the greatest training ethics around, but at the time probably, put more energy into his physical than he did into his technical, or his game understanding. But he was a very hard trainer, probably come about through his time in sevens with Titch, but he was a hell of a hard worker. I think of someone that influenced a lot of people in New Zealand rugby was Brad Thorn. Just his commitment to his body, but also the simplicity about how he got himself ready each week, a banana sandwich for his pre-match meal, a can of lemonade after the game for his recovery, squat, bench and chin twice a week, really simple stuff, meat and potatoes type stuff, but just brilliant. But doing it very well, better than anyone else. Every time I do something that requires a stopwatch, I always think of Brad. And I remember him saying to me, we'd prescribe a 2-minute plank, and he'd be like, can't stop at 2 minutes. You got to stop at 2:01 or 2:02 or 2:03. You can't stop at what's prescribed. You got to do more than what's prescribed. Otherwise you're taking shortcuts, and that's so true. So many people will stop at 1:58. So there's a bit of a test for you.
Yeah, and he was smiling while he was doing those extra 2 seconds, eh?
I don't think he did the extra 2 seconds either. I think he did an extra 2 minutes.
Yeah. So did he eat up a Bronco in comparison to your average forward? Was it beep test back then?
Yeah, it was yo-yo back then, but no, he wasn't anything he didn't have a massive engine. When he came to rugby union, he put on a couple of kilos, so it changed his fitness profile a little bit. Whereas in league, he was a bit smaller, a bit fitter, but definitely solid, definitely right up there, but nothing superhuman.
As they get older and you talk about how they learn their body and their routine and their discipline, do you pare them back slightly as they get older? How much of a workload do you have to take off an athlete as they get to 30 or 40 in Brad Thorn's case?
That last World Cup that Sammy Whitelock was at, he was hitting some PBs in the gym the week of the final. So I don't think it's a matter of, the same thing doesn't occur for all the players. It sort of depends on how you're tracking in that sort of point in time. But, in the All Blacks, you can't sort of not train. You can't not be out on the field for every minute of the training session because you need to be. You're part of the machine, you're part of the team, you're part of the game plan. And so, unless you got a broken leg and you're the 2011 World Cup and you're captain, generally you have to train. So we don't tend to pull things back too much, make the odd allowance and the odd sort of modification, but generally that's the whole point. We're trying to make sure everyone can perform physically at a level that's required at the All Blacks. So there's not a lot of wrapping people in cotton wool.
Well, there's a lot of leaders and role models that are still battling away on the club field, Gilly, and a few of them are my friends in that Prezzies rugby. Now, I've spoken to them about Rugby Ready and suggested that they may want to tap you on the shoulder. Someone like that, though, in all seriousness, that is just not wanting to get an injury, wants to be with the mates, to have that camaraderie at club rugby, maybe slim up a little bit prior to summer and hit the ground running at the start of the year. There's still an element of this Rugby Ready concept that fits the bill for them as well.
Absolutely. We're working with people, trying to run their first 10 kilometres. We're not just working just with rugby players. We're sort of more, that's our specialist niche. That's our core business, but we'll help anyone with anything that they want to achieve, whether that's cleaning up their health, whether that's, like you say, just getting the body ready to play rugby, to enjoy the social and sort of fun aspect of it for as long as possible. We have a couple of coaches on board as well as myself, where we'll work together to find out what's going to work best for each person and help them achieve their goals. And when they achieve their goals, we'll try and help them reset and make some new ones. And I think it's that's why I said it's all ages, all levels. All goals. We're working with some school age kids at the moment. We've got semi-professional athletes. We've got professional athletes. We've got runners. We've got people just wanting to get off the couch and get healthy. So definitely have a program that's tailor-made for anyone.
Awesome, Nick. Hey, well, thank you very much for joining us on the show. Thank you very much for partnering with us and helping the rugby community globally to pick up on the knowledge and the expertise you have in preparing people for rugby or just health and fitness in general. So we appreciate you coming on board with us, and we look forward to working together with you over the next 30 weeks of the rugby season.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, guys. And bring on the partnership and the ability for us to help and reach more people.
Chipper, it seems like your mindset loves a strength and conditioning coach. Your love for him was beaming.
I just think he helped me a hell of a lot. He helped me see things that I didn't know. And I think, that is the biggest reason why I think this relationship or partnership is going to be a great asset to a lot of young players, current players, and even, players that still want to play prezzies.
Let me repeat that again. Follow Rugby Ready. And then what you can do is send a DM, which says ARP, and then put in this week's keyword ruck, as well as why you'd be a good recipient of one of these two prizes. And then you're in the draw to win. We're going to be giving away an ebook collection or a 4-week membership each week, week on week for the next 30 weeks. So plenty of opportunities, no matter where you are in the world. Doesn't matter whether you're in South Africa, in England, in New Zealand, in Australia, Kenya, you can be anywhere in the world. You can win this because this is an online system. So please, send through those DMs to @RugbyReady. You'll see them on the bottom screen there, and use that QR code as well. Speaking of QR codes, plenty of rugby games coming up this week. Let's get into our tips. The Blues at home against the Force. Go to that QR code if you want to buy some tickets, Chipper. This is a huge game for the Blues. If they lose this, they're in trouble.
Well, get to the QR code. Where am I? Get to the QR code because they're doing a mates night. So you get 4 tickets for the price of 3. Get your mates together and get behind the Blues.
Yeah.
They need it. They need the support. They need that, what would we call it, the 24th person to get behind them because it's do or die. Yeah. And I don't think the Force are a team that you can just go, we're going to win this and we're going to get a bonus point, because I do think they need the bonus point as well. So they're going to have to score plenty of points and they're going to have to rectify their issues in the 22.
You're picking the Blues, I'm presuming?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. And for a bonus point.
And for a bonus point as well. I'm going to go the Blues, but I'm not sure about the bonus. The Drua against the Reds. The Drua, I mean, they're basically out of this, but they do have a run of home games now. So they've got the ability to climb the table to a more respectable position. It's been a disappointing year from them. But the Reds at home, who are you picking?
I think I'm going to go the Reds because they're probably the team that's most used to those conditions, in terms of those tropical conditions, and they train all pre-season in it. I think it's probably the least impact. And off the victory of last week, although they have been inconsistent, the error rate just skyrockets for the Drua, and if you give too many opportunities or you blow too many opportunities, as we saw against Moana Pasifika, it does normally lead itself to a 13-plus deficit. I'm
going to go the Drua.
Nice.
And the reason I'm going the Drua is because I feel like when you least expect it, they finally find their feet. They've got a lot to play for, and they are solid at home. I just wonder about the Reds. Away from home, things don't always go to plan. They've been a little bit iffy.
I think the Drua will need to replicate what they did against the Tars. They had 34 kicks for over 1,000 metres. It's pretty much double any other game.
Yeah.
Like, they actually got their balance of attack right. They had energy in the attack to defend well and took their opportunities and probably got rid of the offload game. So it's going to need a very disciplined approach from the Drua.
Yeah, the Canes can shake up the competition this week when they host the Chiefs. If the Chiefs have got some injury worries, obviously, we're seeing at the moment, although we don't have final updates on McKenzie, Tupaia and on Leonard Brown, there's a few things to be worried about for them. They do seem to have players who can step up and go well. Do you think that the Canes will win at home against the Chiefs?
I will say I need to see the squads because those are big outs.
Yeah.
And I think Canes will be confident, but yeah, I think well, I can't talk about home advantage. I suppose if those three players are out, I would be tending to think about the Canes.
The Canes, yeah. Well, I think I'm going to go with the Chiefs just because.
Because you're a Chiefs fan. Although you mock about the Blues and print about the Crusaders, you're just the same.
They are the top of the table. I don't need to say much more than that. Like, throw parochialism out the window. The percentages suggest. Now,
they should win.
The Brumbies at home against the Tars. The Brumbies were surprisingly bad against the Canes. We thought that they were coming into their own. Just when they're coming into their own, they seem to show that they're not necessarily coming into their own. But I'm imagining against the Tars, they should get there.
Yeah, I just think, I don't know, the Tars just haven't been the team we expected. And the Brumbies will go back to what they know and probably be a little bit less expansive and kick to corners and wait for the Tars to make the error for them to strike.
Yeah, this is the one that I kind of struggled with. Part of me, because MP at times, like the Brumbies, look $1 million and at times aren't quite reaching their potential. They're away at the Highlanders. And I feel like this is a 50-50 game.
Yeah, well, the Highlanders are another team that in the 20, like they've created so much opportunity.
Yeah.
So many times they missed out through turnovers. So if they can just sort that out like the Blues and like the Canes, they can probably blow sides away, especially at home. So I agree. I think it's 50-50. I am interested. I'd really like to see Pellegrini and Jackson Garden-Bishop start together.
All right.
In a 10-12.
Yeah, Garden-Bishop at 12.
Yeah, I feel, if Tavatavanawa at 12, defensively it may be a problem, and Tainui is probably saying that's why he's the coach and I'm not, but they looked really solid when they came together late in the piece a few weeks ago, and I just feel like Pellegrini's just a player that will inject, and then under the roof, I think his style plays into their hands. So again, a little bit of a teamless decision. As we're getting tight, like I'm sort of dropping down the ladder, so I need to really do some deep dive research and see where the percentages are at to try and claim points off other people. But my gut will say the Highlanders at home.
You're consistently 5 points off the leaders at the moment. It's Matty 3-3-3-7 on the lead, and well, I wouldn't call him the Boks because he's sharing the lead with GRP. The winner of the competition, our tipping league at tipping.super-rugby, will get a spot on the show at the end of the round robin competition. So you're not that far off with 5 points, but it's hard to make up 5
7 Blues losses really impact my ability. But
yeah, exactly. So plenty going on there. So lots to watch this weekend, plenty to look forward to once again. So thank you very much for joining us. If we'd like to put a bit of dedication, I suppose, to this show this week. Over the last couple of weeks, the family of the Mayhews, after Doc Mayhew passed, have had, it's been a difficult time for them, a difficult time for the rugby community, a big presence within the community.
Yeah, massive, like almost the Kaumatua, especially in my region that I came through. But I just think it's a nice touch on behalf of all sort of the professional players, but even the amateur era players. He touched so many lives. He touched, I suppose, players, even when they retired, he did a lot of work, and I suppose it's just a little bit of an appreciation to the Mayhew family going through a tough time, and just acknowledgement for what John gave to this beautiful game. So our thoughts are still with you, and certainly it's our turn to lift for you guys and your family in this current time.
And thank you for all of you for tuning into the Aotearoa Rugby Pod. Please send us an email, aotearoarugbypod@sky.co.nz, or leave a comment in the YouTube comments section. We'll do our best to get to as many questions as we can in the weeks to come. Thank you to, of course, Ashley and Martin Medical Hair Centres, our sponsors who help bring us the show. Thank you to Rugby Ready for the partnership that begins from here on in. And thank you to everyone behind the scenes who help to make Aotearoa Rugby Pod what it is. We'll see you next week. Mā te wā.